that nobody can keep children out of school if they have not paid. Let's just see how we can balance the thing. None of those things are happening, Janet.
Yes.
So parents have gone back to school. Students have gone back to school with some parents not having paid fees, and they don't know how they're going to go about it. Why would the ministry say, well, this is the amount of fees that you should be paying? Children should not be chased away from school for lack of payment of school fees. We shouldn't see any kind of increment across board. But none of those things are happening. All of those things are in headwinds with one another. Why?
Now, and I said, and when I tell parents that this is a battle of our lifetimes, I mean exactly that. I have with me here a fee structure for Alliance Girls High School. And for the background, the ministry had released a circular when schools were opening. And the ministry said that C1 schools, which are the national schools, should charge 53,000 per year. That is the policy of the Ministry of Education. This is a fee structure from Alliance Girls High School. Term 1. And you see, by the time a school has the audacity to release a fee structure, they are not afraid of anything. No, they are not afraid of anything. And they know that even the Minister for Education cannot query them, because both of them know that the government has not sent money to schools. So how do they expect schools to cooperate? I mean, to run. So in this fee structure, term 1 in Alliance Girls, the fee is 53,491.
The annual fee.
The entire annual fee now has been narrowed down by Alliance Girls to be 53,000
for term 1.
For term 1. For term 2, the school fees is 32,947, and for term 3 is 23,741, bringing it to a total of 110,179. Now, be that as it may, why would the government lie to parents that the fees to be paid in C1 schools? I've selected Alliance because it's a C1,
national school,
national school that so many people would relate with, and the fees is 110, and the government is saying the fees is 53,000. Alliance is charging double that amount without fear. Without fear.
Well, because they know that the ministry has
this structure was issued to a parent. I have just barred the name of the learner. But this is a fee structure that the parent was issued with. So there is no fear anymore. I remember there's a time in this country where schools would not charge beyond 53,000. They would even tiptoe and call secret meetings. Because why? Because the ministry was in control. And for you to be in control, you must come with clean hands. He who comes to equity. For the ministry to be able to be hard on teachers, they must have performed their responsibility in the first place. But right now, there is no moral ground that the Cabinet Secretary for Education can stand on to query principals. But why are you charging? Because this is the clearest indication. We were looking for evidence. Because every time we say that money has not been sent to schools, we get the lie of all times. I think it was last week,
yes,
the president of this country said, money has been sent to schools. Has been sent means past tense. For those who attended grammar schools, means past tense. 2 days later, the PS for Education, appearing before a committee, said money will be sent.
Future.
This is future. So between the president and the PS, who is sending money? Because the president seems to have sent money. Money has been sent to schools. But the PS is saying, as we sit here, the money is being sent to schools. I don't know whether that is past participle or whatever.
Present continuous.
It is present continuous. But to date, there is no indication that that money has, I don't know whether it is working. I do not know. You cannot manage education by lying. You cannot manage education by lying, because these are the consequences of lying. Yes, the ministry today cannot enforce its directives. Why? Because it has lost the moral ground. You want to quarrel a principal of Alliance Girls? Yeah. They will tell you,
take your child away.
Take your child away, because those schools are managed by the BOMs. And the BOMs have sat, and they're the ones who know too well the consequences of having children here and having no money. Now, this is only, and the trend is the same. I also have one for Limuru Girls. And for Limuru Girls is charging an annual fee of about 83,000 and some hundreds. 83,000 and some hundreds. Yeah. Now, the second issue about this thing is, forget about that they are blatantly flouting the ministry's direction. Now, look at it this way. So why would Alliance be charging 110 and Limuru Girls here charging 83,000? That's a difference of close to 30,000, if I'm not wrong. Is it 30,000?
Yes, it is.
So where is the controls? Where is the control? Because all of you meet in the same market. If it's about buying boga, all of you meet in Markiti. All of you are buying electricity from Kenya Power. And these are the things that we discussed way in 2013 when we sat at a task force that was headed by Kilemi Mwiria, when school fees in this country was these figures that we are now talking about. And we sat down and we asked the principals, you guys, can you project to us? Because when one school will be charging 110, the other one is charging 83, the other one is charging 50, the other one is charging 60, that shows you clearly that the ministry is not in control. And that's what we did that time. We sat down and we calculated. It was a very scientific, and thorough process that involved teachers. Teachers were on the table. Parents were on the table. The civil society was on the table. Because when we talk about 110, I know for sure these fee structures have been brought to me by parents. This is a child who is waiting for me at home. And she's telling me, Mweshibo, I cannot be able. And I know the parents. I know them so well. They cannot be able. What we are asking of government is, okay, fair. You have decided to direct all your money to moribund motivation or they're called what? Empowerment programs. It is okay. But can you, control policy? Can you control policy? So that as we wait to put in a government that will care about education, for these 1.3 years, children do not drop out. At least the person who comes after you will not struggle so much, What happened to controlling? What happened to finding out? We issued a policy. Was the policy issued for the sake of it? Are we saying the ministry is a busybody that is just sending policy for the sake of sending policy? Or was it meant to be effective? Because if it was meant to be effective, this is the evidence.
So can we see a direct connection between the lack of sending of capitation, like you mentioned, because that's what it is. When the ministry says we're going to send 23 billion, that's capitation money that's going to schools, right?
Yes.
Can we see a connection between this delay, and it's not a 2026 delay, we're talking about years and years of delay of capitation for which there were lines, budget lines at different schools so that this money could come in to do those things. It didn't happen. So there's money needed to fill those gaps. Are we saying, like now, the increase in fees for which people are told you will pay or you take your child home is directly linked to the delay in capitation funding?
Yes, because the 22,000 per child,
which is now 16.
I have never admitted that it is 16 because I refuse to admit that it is 16.
My sister is 16.
No, I refuse to admit that it is. You know why I refuse to admit that it is 16? Because the president of this country has insisted in speeches that it is 22. Who am I to believe that it is 16? I'm not going to do that. Because lifting that money from 16 to 22 will again take us a lot of we don't want. We are not taking ourselves back to where we came from. We are insisting that it is 22.
Okay.
And that 22 was based on certain vote heads. That 22 was divided across vote heads. So when you do not send it, those activities are still running in the school.
Yeah.
And that's why you think teachers, the heads of schools, offloading that to the parent because the government has refused to pay. Even that you're 16, that I don't want to associate myself with, that you're 16, it is not being sent. Okay, you reduced it from 22. You have still lied to us that you have not reduced. It is 16. You will still not send even that 16. So what exactly are we looking at? We are looking at an irredeemable president who is not interested in long-term gains.
Allow me to throw something else here.
He cannot believe that you can invest billions of shillings where there are no kickbacks. He cannot believe that. He cannot wait to invest in children and harvest in 10 years. He's an impatient person. And he cannot believe in education. notwithstanding that he himself rose through the ranks, through the generosity and through the faithfulness and fidelity of presidents that served during his term. Yeah. He has proudly told us that he's a hustler. Can he explain to us how he paid his school fees? Can he explain to us how he paid his school fees? If we had greedy presidents like him who served when he was a child, would he have managed? Would he have become what he is today? You know, we have stopped having conversations with somebody who is killing the dreams of children. Today, I have a list of grade 10 children. You know grade 10?
Yep.
Grade 10 children who did not show up for first term. The entire first term, children are at home. It is not funny. It's a matter that causes all of us to be angry. And we must be angry for these children. Why? Why is the president so hell-bent on destroying education and health?
Janet, I wanted to take a break and then you can come back. I want to understand, and I know Dennis has a question as well, why these children didn't go to school. It might sound obvious, but I want to hear that if we're going to the second term, why did grade 10s, and we're talking about hundreds of thousands around the country, maybe we have forgotten, but that was the number. At some point, it was 700,000. It reduced to about 400,000. Even 10,000 grade 10 students not appearing to school
at
is
all
a huge number.
One child
not going.
One child means everything to us.
Indeed. Yeah. Let's take a break. We're going to come back and continue with this discussion. I want to understand why this has happened, and we're looking at it in the face. We're staring at this catastrophe. What's going to be done about it? We'll be back in a minute. Don't go away.
This is the Situation Room. This is the Situation Room.
It is not whatever else that anyone may want to convey. It is not hunger. It is not even hunger. It is not even emergencies. It is levies the world over. And that is why we are talking about 2026 right now. Are we in 2026? 26 today. Yes. We were having these conversations in the year 2000. In the year 1998 in Jomtien, Thailand. We were having these conversations in the year 2000 in Dakar, Senegal. That the biggest barriers to education is levies. And that is where governments agreed to enforce free education. And that is why we have Moi Kibaki as our hero. Because he made a decision that many presidents cannot make. And especially presidents who look at public funds for gain, you know. They cannot invest in education. They cannot be patient enough to invest in education because you must be patient, and we have, the good thing is that we have lived the full cycle. Yeah. We have lived here when we have seen Gen Zs making this country proud. Yeah. And what did we all associate it to? Free education.
Free education.
In the younger generation, it is very hard for you to come across a child who did not go through to Form 4.
Yeah.
During when I was raising my children, it was very, very hard to get a nanny because all of them were in school. Yet, there were some years when girls were readily available. They've dropped out at class 6. They've dropped my own age mates. And I like saying this with a lot of humility. I went to school when we were about 87 at class 8. And I can tell you, it's barely about 13 or 14 that went to secondary school. Out of those 87, during my time when I was doing class 8, all those others did not go to school. Why? Because there was no free secondary education. There were fees. Pursuant. Why did my age mates? At least I was lucky because my father was a primary school teacher. He could afford to take me to school. But for those whose parents could not raise those school fees, they have lived with those consequences to date. And so, when we are discussing issues of education and people are thinking that we are emotional, we will tell you no. We are not emotional. We will tell you, stop that insensitivity. Stop that greed. We are not asking you for favors. Yeah. We are asking you, can you implement the constitution of this country? The constitution of this country, Article 43 and Article 53. Can you implement those articles of the constitution that gives every child a right to education? We went further as a country ourselves and said, no, just stopping at a right is not enough. We did the Basic Education Act that said you have a right, but it has to be compulsory. Compulsory means that we are taking affirmative action because we know in our midst, there is a parent who does not have 100 shillings in their pocket.
Yep.
That does not mean that their child does not have a right to education. Their child still has a right to education. That is why even a responsibility in the Basic Education Act is given to the chiefs. It is a responsibility of the chiefs to sweep all children who are not in school, because collectively as a nation we know not taking a child to school is harming us as a nation. You're giving us a very ignorant voter who will make bad decisions of voting bad leaders. Sure. And we will live with the consequences as a collective people. And that is why we are saying education is the right of every child, and we are not begging. And we cannot discuss with William Ruto. We know how he arranges his priorities. And we have seen his body language. And education is not his priority. But we are saying it is our country. It is our money. It is our taxes. And you are going to arrange those priorities according to how we want. Otherwise, we bless the Lord for an opportunity 5 years, every 5 years. Because in 2027, Kenyans and parents of this country and children also, because by the time he took power, their children who were in grade 8, now they are voters. Now those children are voters. And I want to plead with Kenyans that please, there are sectors that have suffered in our sight. There are sectors that have suffered in our sight. There are children who have fallen out of school when William Ruto ruled as president. Those children should sue. Their right to education is justiciable. But they don't have the wherewithal. You know, they cannot do anything. They will live with those consequences for the rest of their lives. And that is why we are saying we do not want things to get there. Because even 1.3 years that is remaining, so much can happen. We do not want to lose any more child. We do not want any other parent to be disheartened. We do not want households to feel the burden that they are feeling. Parents, I've received another fee structure still from Lenana School.
Okay.
Lenana School. To just corroborate what we were saying about Alliance Girls. And Lenana is charging a whooping 110,000 Kenya shillings to the parents against a government policy that is saying C1 schools such as Lenana will be charging 53,000.
53, yeah.
So we want to book a date. We want to book a date with the Minister for Education because we want him to explain to us with the aid of very well-labeled diagrams how does a school charge 110 and you are telling parents that is 53,000.
53.
It's supposed to be. There's a conversation that must be had.
There is one that was had, a couple of weeks ago, a couple of months ago, that the ministry, again, who you want to go and visit, admitted that they do not know the cost of education. They don't know the unit cost of education from the time a child starts at the ECDC level to the time they're going to university. They don't know the unit cost of education. So if that's the case, how then is capitation set at that 22,400 shillings then applicable if you don't know how much it costs?
I will not even ask him how the 22,000 is applicable. It's very easy to say that we do not know the cost. But I just want to manage the ministers. Probably he's trying to probably he wants a PhD document. You know, no, it is not a PhD document. I want to refer him to the Kilemi Muria report in a task force that I sat that tried to conceptualize and tried to understand some of these costings. And they came up with the 22,000, sort of saying, if government augmented what parents are paying by this amount, then the burden will be lighter on parents. And using 22,000, as it were that time, we can run free day secondary education. For people who do not know the cost of education, so where are they coming from to reduce it from 22 to 16,000? If indeed it is not known by anybody, where is your background? Where were you coming from to say no? It is not 22. It is actually 16. So we have refused, and we refuse to have conversations that have been concluded by other governments that we have seen existed. We refuse to start afresh. And I have said this, we are not engaging the president based on the Kenya Kwanza manifesto. No, it's a very inferior document. We are not engaging him based on the Kenya Kwanza manifesto. We are only confining ourselves to the constitution of this country, which he swore to protect. The moment he stops protecting the constitution, he loses ground for continuing to become our president.
You see, Janet, education and lack of it, children don't access education because of what you've said is levies. But you go through budget cycles, and education was allocated 702.7 billion. So let me just break it down further. So 387 billion would go to TSC, free primary and secondary education, 58.9 billion. And here we are talking about that money that is meant for capitation not being there. Yet on a single day, the president stood and said Nairobi would be allocated 80 billion shillings. There's seemingly money for everything else.
Apart from?
But education. Which then brings me to the next question, where with all these budget making process and appropriation of budgets to specific budgets, is it just a ticket item? Or is it just that the government of Kenya does not value education for the children of the Republic?
The government of Kenya, you know, there are certain admissions that I refuse to make. I refuse to make an admission to the effect that the government of Kenya does not value education. We will not even allow our neighbors to hear us saying that about ourselves. It is one person who has pretended, because he has seen different priorities. He knows very well that even if the billions that you're talking about, I do not send them to education, there will not be a consequence. You know, there will not be a consequence. What consequence, for example, does William Ruto have right now that children are at home? What is the consequence? Zero. Because why? The following things that he will do. He will collect parents of Kasarani, put them in one hall, bring mattresses, water tanks. What else are these empowerment shenanigans? And every parent to walk home with 1,000 shillings. To him, that is more important. That is more strategic. To him, that lies to the people. That I'm a president who listens to you, vijana, vikundi ya vijana, mpate pikipiki. Can you stop giving youth a motorcycle? If you superintended over them when they were dropping out of school and you did not send the money that you were supposed to them, stop waiting for them at the junction with a motorbike. That is not empowerment. So what happens if you buy for every kijana motorbike? Watabeba nani? Right now, there's a crisis at every stage. At every stage, there are more motorbikes than the passengers that are supposed to be ferried. So the kind of economics that William Ruto is subjecting this country to is just unfortunate. And I have always wanted to tell the president, please, I know that you believe in education. Because I interacted with the president when he was the Minister for Higher Education.
Yes.
Yes. And when we were discussing Vision 2030, I give this example because I saw him. I sat in the hall. For the records, the NGO that time I was a CEO of was the one that had funded that meeting where we were discussing Vision 2030. And that time, Mogo Kibati was the CEO. And the president was the chief guest. And we were discussing Vision 2030. I have never forgotten his words, how he was saying the central role of education in transforming this country to a middle-income economy. Where has that gone to? So we're dealing with someone who knows what is supposed to be done. But out of bad will and bad faith, he is deciding. You said 80 million for what?
Nairobi. Wow.
80 billion for Nairobi.
80 billion for Nairobi is more important to him. And he does not want to pass that money through the systemic. There is the county assembly of Nairobi, you know, that probably would tell him, no, we have better priority. We have, because the MCAs are the ones that really interface with people on the ground. They would say, yeah, we think that level 4, I mean the maternity hospital in Ruai requires a bed, you know, requires this, requires this. So he doesn't want to engage Kenyans through the systemic ways of doing things. So when Nairobi will be brought for 80 billion, probably the 30 billion is what will hit the road for Nairobi, and 50 billion will be unaccounted for. And this is not how we had imagined that our country would one day be run. This is not how we had actually imagined. You cannot come from 2000, when we are saying all children are in school, to 2026, when we are counting the children who are in school. We cannot. It is an unacceptable state of affairs, and Kenyans must rise. And if for nothing else, Kenyans must defend their right to education. And there is only one way to defend the right to education. We have known we cannot discuss education in isolation. We cannot sit here and discuss education in isolation, because we have seen how bad presidents affect education.
Right, and
so we have to discuss it in the global perspective of reforming our country. We want leaders that believe in the Constitution and in the right to education of our children.
So over the last 6 years, capitation has delayed. We looked at a period between 2024 going backwards to 2019, where already there was a 64 billion shilling bill. That was the amount of capitation that had not been sent to schools by the end of 2024. So add 2025, add now where we are in the second term. So interesting enough, first term capitation was sent on time, even before schools opened first term. And we thought, perhaps this is the year of our Lord. And 2026 would be different. But then now we are here getting into second term and that hasn't happened just yet. What happens to the money that doesn't go to capitation? Because you know what? You still owe them. If you paid less, this still 22,000, less 7,000, and then less another 3,000, you still ended up paying them just 11,000 shillings in capitation. You ended up sending 11,000 shillings per child in capitation. This is now, we're just talking about secondary, right? If you didn't send that money, what happens? This is two blocks of money. The money that gets into the budget basket is money that comes from revenue, taxes, and then money that comes from borrowing. So if money has come, if it comes eventually, so because we've said that budget has been fulfilled, isn't it? That at the end of the financial year in Kenya, the fiscal year, budget has been fulfilled. Yes. Because budget is not just saying where is it going to come from. It's actually looking at the spending process, appropriating all of that spend, and we say, okay, this is what the audit report looks like. That's why these two offices are working together. Now, if you say that the budget for education was 702 billion, all of these boxes should have been filled. At the end of the period, we know that there's certain money you have not sent, but your budget has been filled. Where does that money go? Who accounts for that money and says, yes, we still owe you 11,000 shillings in capitation between 2024 and 2026, but that money has come in and Kenyans are paying it back in tax? Where is that money?
Unfortunately, I'm not a member.
Or do they give? I know, but do they? We can wonder together here. Does it come back? Is it in a kitty somewhere and they say, okay, come 20, we'll give it? What happens?
You see, the problem is not even the Ministry of Education, because sometimes you would even sympathize with the Cabinet Secretary for Education, because they have written down their requirements for the sector, and it goes through Parliament, and Parliament is one that appropriates. So these questions, it's unfortunate that we are asking them in this setup, and they have not been asked in the correct forum. And the correct forum is Parliament. So when I see a member of Parliament in a matanga telling us the way money for education has not been sent, and I'm like, shut up. Can you go and ask those questions where it matters the most? So what are you telling people in a matanga that money has been sent, so they do? And I listened
also
to the
that
conversation that you were having in the
you.
first hour when you were discussing about Parliament. And it's unfortunate. And it is unfortunate because where are these accountabilities? How don't we know? How Parliament passes the law, which is the appropriations, that this money was supposed to be spent this way, this money was supposed to be shared this way. So midway, money for education has not been sent, but there is monies for everything else. The 80 billion that you're saying for Nairobi, there is monies for empowerment. There is money. So the problem that we have, and I hope that Kenyans are learning from this, is that Parliament is our shield. It is supposed to be our shield. Before a greedy president who does not respect the Constitution hits Mwananchi, he ought to find a very strong buffer here.
In Parliament.
In Parliament. Pushing him away. That is why they're called oversight. But what kind of oversight are we having right now? Because the same money has been used to buy Parliament. It has bought the members of Parliament. This is how come a summon by the president to members of Parliament is more important than a summon by the people who voted for them. We have the evidence. We told them, do not pass the finance bill. Because why? You're robbing us of disposable income. But a summon by the president is more important to them. Why? You know, the why is so clear. Because the president will not vote for you. The president cannot vote for a member of Parliament. The president cannot fire He cannot fire a member of parliament. He cannot. He does not have that kind of ability. So Kenyans must investigate. What is this that makes the president be listened to by the members of parliament? It is because this administration has destroyed all systems. I listened to members of parliament telling us that, we have to go to the president's party so that you can get development. Hogwash.
On Hogwash, let's take a break. It's 9 a.m. We continue with this conversation because then moving forward, where are we going? Where are we going? And we have to answer those questions. Morning, 9 a.m.
The latest news from around the world. 94.4 Spice FM.
Good morning. This is the Newswire. I'm Leah Ubaga. Employment agencies found violating employment laws will be stripped off their...
The only way to start your day.
The degree of, because when we talk about teaching, we're talking about the transference of knowledge and the ability then for a child or a learner to understand from this transference. Now, even with all of those problems, unfortunately, this knowledge receptacle is not working. Because if you have this is the Usawa agenda did give us a report earlier that we were looking at students. This is not even this KNEC report.
Yeah.
This was the Usawa agenda report on grade 6 learners who are not able to read and write, comprehension, not able to read and write. So even with all of those problems then, even the manner of teaching and how it is happening, the handle on knowledge and understanding is still a problem. I mean, honestly, how many problems can you have in just one sector? And then we also have to ask ourselves that this system around education, is it really working? I mean, there's the emotions and the sensitization. I do believe that when you see something going wrong, if you pretend like everything is okay and say it's going to get better tomorrow, you're part of the problem. That if you don't speak out about it and say, no, this has got to do better, we're actually forming part of the problem. But emotions and sensitivity aside, is this working for Kenya right now? Is it working? And if it's not, what can actually be done about it?
Actually, is that the competency-based education is not the issue.
Yeah.
It is not at all. If you do not send money to schools, let me give you and our listeners an analogy. It's like a family that anticipates that our income every month is 30,000. So that family is able to plan. And it's even able to plan to have its meal plan, because we know that every month we have an income, say, of 30,000. So if we set aside, say, 10,000, so we're able to plan that it is sukuma wiki na mboga, na ugali na mayai. Once in a while, we throw in a quarter kilo of meat. They're able to plan. So that family, in the context of feeding only, is able to have a balanced diet because you can feed. Now, that is different from a family that will have the 30,000, but we don't know when it will come. We don't know when it will come. So today we have 100 shillings. So when we have 100 shillings, we rush to the Githeri.
The next available spots.
The next available, So this 30,000 family can be malnutrited, because when you get money, you get what is available. You get what is available. Because when you had time to plan, you could even have gone to the Mama Mboga from Kisii, brings for you the kienyeji mbogas. You are able to plan.
Yeah.
That is exactly what the head teachers, especially of primary schools, are telling the president today. That the head teachers today have high blood pressure. Because they are not able to relax in school. You cannot plan that I will buy, this at this particular time. I will do this. I will do this. No, you can't, because you oscillate between school and Jogo. You to find out to the bank, has the money come? The money has not come. You don't know whether to charge parents, because again, when you charge parents, you're embarrassing an already bad government. So head teachers don't know what to do. those are and they're expecting the 30,000 I talked about, the capitation of 1,200. It might come, but for now we don't have it. That is what you're seeing affecting quality of education, because when the school is not relaxed, and the head teacher is forever angry, is forever bitter, is forever, because this government is splitting heads of schools against the parents.
Yeah.
Like, for example, the parents of Limuru girls here, one of the reps has written to me and is telling me, Ouko, somebody needs to talk about the plight of parents in national schools. Our school added remedial fees from 4,500 to 6,000.
What is remedial?
The remedial.
It's like assistive learning.
It's like extra classes, isn't it?
Extra classes, yeah.
Extra classes. Okay, do not, these are outlawed.
Yes.
Yes. That's what I was going to ask.
Actually,
That's what I was going to say. I thought they were not. Yeah.
I want you to look at 6,000 shillings. 6,000 shillings to a certain household. It is actually what they eat for the entire month.
Yeah.
Because we are in Kenya. Let people stop operating as if others are living in Europe and only come to supervise us or to help us. No. All of us know. And when we are saying some of these levies have a direct impact on households.
Yep.
Now, this same parent who was added the 6,000, at our school added remedial fees from 4,500 to 6,000 and development fees out of the blues to 10,000. So this parent did not know that they were supposed to part with 16,000. This is 6,000 plus 10,000. That is 16,000. And they have been, from 4 parents, were to pay fees in 2 installments. First and foremost, whose sharias are these?
Yeah.
Whose rules are these? As far as I'm concerned, the Ministry of Education says 50%, 30%, and 20%. So why are schools developing their own sharias and locking schools out of? Because they say the Form 4 parents were supposed to pay fees in 2 installments, but we were shocked on Monday when we took our kids back to school. So you'd already finished paying your installments for the two terms, as they said, but they have added another 16,000, 6,000 for remedial and 10,000 for development, which is what brings me to the next issue that I want to discuss, that this government has no plan for CBE, competency-based education. And the plan, because I said, the plan cannot be the capitation, because capitation is money for electricity, is literally money to keep the school going. But capitation is not money for development. So the money for development, the burden for development to accommodate the dictates of the competency-based education have been pushed to the parent.
But those are the conversations that are being had with PTAs and school management currently, whereby to justify the increment that is then applied is that, well, we need a new dining hall, or we need to buy a new bus, or we need to a new classroom, or we need to put up a new social hall, or rather a multi-purpose hall, whatever the case may be. So it is applied directly to a need that the school has at the time. So what was when you talk about the Milema report, Muir report, what was the agreement in terms of what was supposed to happen for development in schools vis-a-vis how much then was supposed to be paid? Because that is the reasoning that's being given to a lot of parents right now. If we're talking about the plight of parents in national schools, the reasoning that's being given for the increment in fees right now is that, we need a new dining hall. We have many more students than we had last time. We need a new dining hall. We're going to buy a couple new buses. We need to, erect new labs and things like that. What is it supposed to be, whereby we look at development of schools, even the building of new schools? Where is that money supposed to come from?
It's really sad to discuss some of these things, because we seem to be opening a conversation that we do not then want to facilitate a national conversation about. Education is the business of the government. 100%. It is a business of the government. Anyone who feels otherwise must call us for a referendum, so that then we open it up to saying that it can be private and it can be publicly offered. Because some of the fee structures that the parents are carrying around have no difference with a private school.
Yes.
They have absolutely no difference. So it is we are now looking at privatization of education disguised as supporting the government to do what? Why is government having money for roads? Why is government having money for houses? Let me tell you, Ndu, this is a very interesting government that decided to rank the right to housing higher than the right to education. Without consulting Kenyans, it decided that the right to housing is more important than the right to education. And now everything we get to hear about is monies for building this and building the other. And we all know, because Kenyans can clearly see through it. Yes, you're taking money where there is business. But because you do not think that children are your business, you deny the education sector money. It was never contemplated that it will be the responsibility of parents to put up schools. It is the responsibility squarely of the government.
So is the money that's allocated towards education in the national budget, I beg your pardon, not sufficient?
The government is not allocating money for development. You see that? It is not allocating money for development. What we expected, and I say this with a lot of humility, is that by the time William Ruto was coming in, the education sector was going through a transition. And it was transitioning to the competency-based curriculum, which is now competency-based education. I was expecting that William Ruto will fit into the space and say education is going through some reforms and give quite some thought to it, including at least retain education managers that had supported midwifery of this competency-based education, because they knew, that this is what we need to do and this is what we need to do. But that is not what we saw happening. That is not what we saw happening. He brought in completely new people and people who are so remote to the sector, and so that already, to some of us who could see through it, sent the messages that we needed, that there is no much interest in carrying out this competency-based education with the precision that it required to be done. And that is why, when you look at the budget for education, you will not see much variance between what was happening in the past and now, because there is no money for development. And that development, a child who has been admitted to go and do music in a school that had not looked at that social field of study, where do you expect them to get these ultramural stadiums, and studios and all that? Parents will be called to a meeting and asked to contribute for that. And that is why you think fees going up by 110,000. But you know what? We have said no, and we are visiting, because it is us who are there when these those previous governments were charging 110. It is us who reduced school fees to 53,000. We are still here, and we can still, reclaim our space and push back this state and tell the state. When you look at Alliance, it is very easy for you to make an assumption that all those parents have got money. No, the criteria that was used to admit those children was not income-based.
No, it wasn't.
It was results. That a child from Turkana, a child from Mailisaba in Kasarani has made the cut to Alliance. So you cannot make decisions that will exclude, that child. And we are aggressively even going to court to challenge some of these fee structures, because these are illegalities. They are not supported by government policy. They're not even supported by the law.
Janet, you talk about JSS in shambles, capitation in shambles, infrastructure unavailable. You talk about health, teachers unavailable. And here you talk about parliament and executive that is seemingly speaking the same language. No one is checking the other to ensure that education is delivered to the children of this republic. But you go a little bit further back, 2022, 2027, Ruto's manifesto. I just want to drop that in there. And the president gave a promise of 12 years of university basic education for all learners, focusing on reducing inequality between rich and poor students. Strengthen secondary school education to make education cheaper than boarding. Just those two, because they are all the way to around 17. None of that is being achieved today. But I want to speak where Parliament sits in ensuring that everything, in ensuring that quality of education is done, is given, that appropriation of funds goes there, and that money is spent well, and Parliament is silent. Is Parliament the weakest link in this entire conversation? Because they have the power of oversight. They have the power to call government to ensure, to ask why capitation never got there. Is it the weakest link?
You know, I wanted to say that Mwananchi is the weakest link.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the common voter. And I almost quickly forgive them.
Yeah.
You know, because if you look at the amount of money that has been cut from the public basket to private individuals' pockets, and how that money can affect the voters. You need to be a politician to understand how that money can influence the voter, especially when you have caused so much pressure on that voter by denying them almost everything. Including a daily source of livelihood. They don't have. So when you come with 1,000 shillings, I do not want anybody to underestimate what 1,000 can do to a household that did not eat yesterday, does not know what to eat today, and will not eat tomorrow. It is devastating, and that is what William Ruto has mastered. That money can do almost everything. Money can do almost everything. That is what he has mastered. But I want to really, because when you look at the crop of members of parliament that we have, and you ask our voters, like, what criteria did you use to arrive at this person? Do you first understand that the member of parliament is your shield? Do you already understand that the member of parliament is supposed to be your shield?
Yeah.
That before the president gets to you, before he gets to your business, to tax you as heavily as he has taxed you today, he ought to have found this buffer. He ought to have fought with this buffer completely, a whole fight, until he gives up. That is what we want to put in our citizens. That we are where we are as a country because you gave very bad quality of persons who are supposed to be your defenders to go and defend you. Some people even voted for somebody who cannot speak. They has never uttered a word in parliament. And I asked them, so how does this person defend you? How does this person defend you? Because parliament is about that. And when you see people saying that he gave us 1,000 shillings, I almost want to tell them, when your child is out of school, can you go and collect that? Go back to where you kept that 1,000, retrieve it, go and pay. Do not sell your conscience. We have suffered as a country for now. This is the 4th year going, and when you walk amongst people, and you walk amongst you can feel it. You can feel it. Yep. I walk in the streets of Kasarani, Choka, Ouko, and you're meeting children. Can you believe in one street of about 200 meters, you will meet 5 children who are out of school? 200 meters, that one Soko street.
But because
you
they're
will meet
unable
5
to afford,
children. When you ask what is the problem, this one aliambiwa uniform, aliambiwa alete kiti. Do you know that for you to access a public primary school in Nairobi, you have to go with a desk?
Yes.
As if the ones who exited class 8 went with the desk. They did not go with the desks. And guess what? You will be told it is not a physical desk that you want to come with. A desk is 5,000. So bring in 5,000. Not a problem. But I am saying the heads of schools also are operating within certain difficulties. But it is the Ministry of Education that is the regulator of policy. Why has the ministry opened parents to so much suffering? Some heads are running public institutions as if they were private institutions, and who suffers? It is those children that are meeting on the streets. Because when you tell a parent, go and come with 5,000 shillings, go and buy uniform, you're supposed to bring this book, and then every day you come with 50 shillings, you come with and all that. That is how you are meeting children on the streets. And let me tell you, it is not okay. It is not fair. It is not fair. Policy dictates that if the government is telling us that we are implementing 100% transition, when you're transiting to junior, secondary school, for example, that has now become another junction. And the writers of CBC had not, this is not what they had anticipated. It was supposed to further 100% transition. But when we created another junction there, where now you're supposed to transition to a different place and you have a complete set of brand new uniform. And I say, Kenyans are very interesting. Look at international schools. Yeah. They coexist all the way from the early years, all the way to senior school in one piece of uniform.
Yeah.
Why do poor people complicate things like this? Why do we like complicating things like this? Why? It is because we have to sustain certain businesses within the school. It is someone's business. So who has failed parents in that particular context? It is the government. Because the government is not regulating the sector as it is supposed to regulate the sector. Why isn't the government regulating the sector? Because the government has failed in its duties. So to quote support from these people is, you support me, you keep quiet on the areas that I am weak, and I will also keep quiet when you're doing a few things.
At the expense of the nation's children.
That's how
what
children,
we're talking about.
is how children are out of school. Otherwise, what explanation does the Ministry of Education have to drop access levels to the levels that access levels have dropped at current? One might be meeting children, and I have threatened that I am going to carry children. I have called them and I have a list of them here. I will give evidence in Jogo House that you guys are walking around this country lying to people that children are in school. These ones are not in school. Let us stop the lies. Let us activate the sector that we knew, where we could see a CS walking around, going to schools. CSs would walk in schools and head teachers' camper. Yes. Why? Because of faithfulness and fidelity to policies that the Ministry of Education has set. But at current, a policy of the ministry is just another paper, is an extra paper. This is evidence, which I am taking to the minister right after this show. I am taking to the minister. I want the minister to explain to me, why did you release a policy saying 53,000? This is your school, charging 110. This is another one, charging 110. I've read you from Lenana School. I've read for you from Limuru Girls is at 83. Why? And 83 minus the 10 that and the 16. Yeah. So it's coming to about 96.
96.
96,000 thereabout. In fact, it's 100. It's 100. It's 100,000. Yes. So we can say that C1 schools are now charging an average of 100,000.
And you can't tell me that the ministry is unaware, or can you?
The Ministry of Education has got directors of education all the way to every county and even every sub-county. And these fee structures, from what I know and from practice from other, CSAs that I have seen, are approved by the sub-county directors of education. So the sub-county director of education is acting on whose behalf? Is acting on the behalf of a minister. So if the minister is not aware of this, I do not know that he's not aware. I do not know if he's not aware because he does not want to know or because he doesn't do his job. But what we are saying is that we are not going to sit back and watch the sector going the direction that it is going. Certain people must rise up. Certain people must rise up and defend the children. And let me remind parents, these children are suffering today because of your decisions. And we are now going to another decision moment. Please make good decisions for your children. They will not be there to queue to get that 200 shillings, to get that 500 shillings. Please do not sell their future because of a 500 shillings or because of 1,000 shillings. It is not nice.
In terms of responsibility, we're just going to go to a break in a bit. But in terms of responsibility, here we are, and as we just list down some of these things, but that you say that there's a direct relation between who you put into these positions of leadership at every level, from your wards to your member of parliament, to your governor, senator, woman rep, all the way to president. Who you put in these positions then really does matter. And if you can't make the connection between what you're seeing today and where we are tomorrow, then perhaps there is more than a problem than we're able to then recognize. But then when we look at the overall quality of education that's being delivered with all of these challenges that are in at the moment, is it fixable with just a change of leadership, or does it need an entire system overhaul?
You know, there are so many problems in education, so many, that we actually need an overdose. And we need an overdose of, I have said it severally, tone at the top. Yeah, tone at the top. Because what is messing education here is that we have the wrong tone at the top.
Yes.
That is what is ailing education. I want to give you an example of tone at the top and the problems that can portend. I sat here in this show when Nancy Macharia was exiting the Teacher Service Commission. And I predicted that, watch guys, that the Teacher Service Commission is the next thing that William Ruto has his eyes on.
For what purpose, Janet?
For putting a person that can be able to play ball. I am vindicated. Because today, as we speak, we all know who the CEO for TSE is. We all know what has happened to the process. We all know that the process was manipulated to end up with a certain person as the CEO of the Teacher Service Commission. Now, this has a lot of relationship with all the problems that you're seeing teachers having. Because this is somebody who is now a phone call. I mean, you know, this SHA, you hear teachers complaining about SHA and SHE. Their unions cannot do anything.
No.
Because if they try and go against that, TSC is under CAG. It will just be told, do to KNUT like you did the Sosion Times. The deductions and all that. No union no union wants to go through that. And that's why you're seeing, for the first time in the history of KNUT and KUPPET, the union leaders are speaking this language and their members are speaking a different language. Mind you, the elections were barely concluded like a month ago.
Yeah.
You know, so you were expecting that this is the time that the leadership of the unions and their members are in sync more than any other time. But no, because the union leaders know the risks that they face by challenging the government. Because TSC is already under, the control of this person. And that's why I'm telling you, we are not running this country from the systems that we know. We are not running the country from the systems that we know. One person has collapsed all the systems, and he is now the system himself. It is, I am the one who is saying, 23 billion has been sent to schools.
Yeah.
I am very sure even the PS for finance was hearing the 23 billion
For the first time.
for the first time at that particular place. And I want to show you how this one person has captured the system. Do you know, in this country, the PS for education one day walked to Parliament, the Parliamentary Committee on Education, and confessed that we have 50,000 ghost students.
Yeah.
50,000 ghost students. That's the PS admitting. So many months down the line, there is no single. Have you guys heard about one single course of action that has been taken? No. Because why? The teachers spoke, and the teacher said no. We have not stolen any money. The teachers have not stolen money. We dare you point at those teachers who have stolen money. They had nowhere to point because all the fingers were pointing at them. That is how come today. Do you know what it means to have 50,000 ghost students at a cost of 22,000 each? Those are billions of money. But today, the children will be told there is no money. But money will go to ghosts. And the president will do nothing about money. One day we woke up to a Daily Nation, a whole front pager of 2 billion shillings lost to bursaries. I don't know if you remember that headline. 2 billion lost to bursaries. It was the same day that there had been a controversy of somebody who had accused the president of losing too much weight. You know? The president had 5 minutes on a rooftop of a car to discuss his weight loss, but could not discuss 2 billion shillings lost to bursaries. The president is blind to corruption that is happening in the education sector. He is blind for reasons that he alone can explain. How do you explain 2 billion shillings in the education? And the president has not commented. A president who has time to comment about everything else, including commenting about his weight loss. But he will not comment when 50,000 children are ghosts and are sucking money. Because we said We know ghosts do not withdraw money. There might have been ghost students, yes, but ghosts did not withdraw money. There is somebody who withdrew money.
There's someone
And
who
the
sent the
records
money.
are there. What doesn't the Ministry of Education know? If you have records that you sent this money to this school and this money was withdrawn by a certain person, who is that certain person? In short, this is to say that the monkey's hand is in the bag. Yeah, the monkey's hand is in the bag. And until the monkey removes the hand from the bag, we will not have a country. We will not have a country. And that's why I said sometimes I am not being political. It is that we cannot discuss education in isolation because we know all decisions are not being made at Jogo. The decisions are not being made at Jogo. The decisions are being made at Harambe. It is the president who is making every decision about this concerning this country. And I have said, he has sometimes said things, and the PS, the PS is actually the technical in charge. He's the accounting officer of the Ministry of Education. So how do you explain that the president will be saying money was sent? He was telling us the other day that capitation for second term, money has been sent. His PS, appearing before committee in parliament, is saying, as we are speaking, money is being sent. 2 days apart.
Yep.
So how does the president know that the money was sent and the accounting officer is not aware that money was sent?
Yeah.
You know, some of those things are not really coming out very, very, very nicely. Allow me to give an analogy to just give the inconsistency.
Okay.
Remember, there's this thing about the Tarakaniti Bridge.
The
Nithi Bridge.
Yes.
And I've watched it severally because I just wanted to understand the president. In 7 different occasions, he has addressed the Nithi Bridge.
Yeah.
And in one occasion, he says that we have a contractor. As we are speaking, we have identified a contractor, and the contractor is coming. Now he forgets that, and again he finds himself addressing the Nithi Bridge. He says, "We have found 5 billion shillings to do. We have set aside 5 billion shillings to do Nithi Bridge." Now he very quickly forgets again when he finds himself with the members from around Nithi and says, "We have 7 billion shillings." So you can imagine the movement from 5 billion to 7 billion.
Yep.
So to him, 2 billion is some change. Things that we can just
There's a
discuss.
50 you've missed,
Now hold
by
up,
the way.
because that is the fifth time that he was addressing the Nithi Bridge, and he said, I actually sat down with it and I had to study it. That we have 2 people that we are discussing with the Nithi Bridge. One of them has told us that it will cost 5 billion to do the bridge.
Yes.
But this other person is saying it will cost 50 billion. Can you believe a sane person discussing 5 billion and 50 billion in one sentence? I mean, so this is how this country is being governed. Like, you're just fetching stuff from your head and telling us, because you have broken all accountability mechanisms, you have broken every system that can hold you to account. And now it is your word against everyone else's. It is a sad state of affairs.
It is a sad state of affairs, especially when we want to look at the majority of the population who's going through this system. And we can say for this at this time that what actually is the future, we do not know. Let's take a break real quick. We come back and see how we can... Now, Janet, there've got to be solutions. There's got to be a way. And who's going to pursue that way? But at least let's look at some of those when we come back from this break. We'll do that and we'll be back in a bit at 22 minutes to 10.